part of the reason that I'm here, and I'm here with Congressman Engel, is that we want to certainly see firsthand, but we also want to make sure that we are advocates in the United States Congress for the United States to continue to support our commitment to making sure that the forces are here to assist the people of Kosovo to stabilize the border. You can't be a sovereign country if you don't have the ability to safeguard and protect your borders and control what happens over those borders. Until we get to that point, some assistance is going to be necessary, and KFOR is going to be an important part of that, although we need to be politically making that case every single day in the United States Congress. It's something that we'll be doing as members of the Albanian Issues Caucus. I know the NAC organization is actively involved in that as well. We've invested a great deal as the American people because we share values with the people of Kosovo. We have made that investment. We can't let that investment slip away. We've got to continue to stand firm, and certainly I think I speak for Eliot and I that we're committed to doing just that.
Another question? In the back. Could we pass the microphone down that road, please?
Hello, I'm Gumbar Zagroza, a freshman here at the UK. Now my question might seem too simple, but you know, I'm a freshman. Okay, so the general of KFOR declared himself that we do have the power to remove the barricades, the physical barricades on the northern Mitrovica. Could you just tell me, what is it that is keeping KFOR from doing that? Is it possible rebellion of the Serbs, or if that's not it, then what is it? Because really, I can't think of anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and I think you answered it. I think that there has been a pulling back of the international community in keeping its commitment that was made. You know, when Kosovo was declared independent, or even in the years before then, you had a lot more troops from the international community than you have now. There has been a will. You know, one of the reasons that I was so supportive, excuse me, of the bombing of the Serbs to prevent ethnic cleansing was, first of all, it was the right thing to do. It was important to prevent ethnic cleansing. But I really believe that without the United States pushing it, it just wouldn't have happened. I think that what happens with Europe is they tend to take the easy way out, and they just don't want to commit to these kinds of things. And I think that in the years since independence, and it's almost 4 years, they've sort of fallen into a state where it's easier not to confront the Serbs. It's easier not to confront lawlessness. It's easier to just kind of have the status quo and kind of hope that everything kind of just is calm, you know. To me, that's the opposite thing you should do. You cannot have stability if you haven't laid the groundwork for stability. And the way you lay the groundwork for stability is you clean out the illegality there. You know, you can't have borders that are closed by anything but the legal government. And Kosovo was declared independent, and you know, 22 or 23 or the 27, 22, I think it is, the 27 European Union countries recognize Kosovo diplomatically. Not everybody, and there are 5, unfortunately, that I think are making a big mistake, but for whatever reasons of their own, they haven't declared. And of course, 85 countries have now recognized Kosovo. We want more, and in my office in Washington, whenever I have a foreign ambassador or a foreign minister or even a prime minister or a president of any country come into my office, I always push them to, if they haven't yet recognized Kosovo, to recognize Kosovo. So the real answer to your question is, I think that people are tired or disinclined to involve themselves into something that might be a controversy, that might flare up into violence, that might mean a commitment. And to me, I think that's the opposite what should really happen. I think that we need to make sure that we take care of it now, because it's not going to get better if we just leave it alone. In my opinion, it'll get worse. It'll embolden the extreme Serbs. And you know, we should also be clear about it. Not every Serb that lives in Kosovo is extreme. Many just want to be citizens of Kosovo. We just went to one of the villages today, a Serb village, where people are very much wanting to be part and parcel of Kosovo. And I think that would be true to most of the Serbs in the north as well. But again, you've got criminal elements and others who like it the way it is. They don't have to pay tariffs. They can do things with impunity. And the international will is dissipating. But we need to reverse that. We need to change that.
Take another question.
My name is Tefika Vushni, and I'm a senior student from Milan. Already we have 85 countries that recognize Kosovo, and I'm concerned about the long-term project. How Kosovo should position itself in a strategy of becoming a member of United Nations. Doing to know that we have two major powers such as China and Russia that are against the Kosovo independence.
Well, I think that eventually Kosovo will be a member of the United Nations because it deserves to be. Unfortunately, the structure of the United Nations allows Russia, who has a veto power of the Security Council, to block admission of any country they would like to block. And Russia and Serbia have always worked closely together, and it is China as well, but in my opinion it's mostly Russia that's been blocking it. That's why I don't support the Serbian accession to the European Union, because I don't want Serbia to be a member of the European Union, and then when Kosovo wants to come in, Serbia would be then blocking Kosovo. I would be for Serbia to be part of the European Union if Serbia joined at the same time Kosovo was allowed to join. I have nothing against the Serbia, other than the fact that I think what happened in Kosovo under Milosevic was a horrible thing. Hopefully we can put that behind us. But I don't think Serbia can be a member of the EU before Kosovo, because she will continue to do what she's doing in the United Nations, and that's blocking Kosovo. I don't think that can be sustained forever. It might take several years, it's frustrating, it's aggravating, but I think eventually more and more countries will recognize Kosovo. I mean, 85 is a substantial amount. You know, there were times we were stuck at 50 or 55 or 60, and little by little we're getting more, and we'll continue to get more. There's been a lot of pressure on some of these countries not to recognize, and they come up with ridiculous excuses, because I've talked to, again, prime ministers and foreign ministers of many, many countries who haven't recognized Kosovo, and we get silly reasons why. But eventually it will happen. I have a good feeling about it, and that's why I'm so committed to the United States alliance with Kosovo. I think it's very important that the United States makes it clear to everybody in the world that we stand with the people of Kosovo in their attempt to have a free and independent nation, which you have, but in the attempt to gain acceptance from the world community, which you have with most of the world community. Unfortunately, these things take time. But again, I would be optimistic, because if you look at where we were 20 years ago, you know, I will tell you one other thing. In the 1990s, I went to Belgrade and I met with Milosevic. It was just, he had nobody with him. It was just him and me, and I had about 3 or 4 people with me. And I started to talk to him all about Kosovo, and at that time talked to him about the lack of the ability of Albanians in Kosovo to be able to participate, lack of Albanian schools, and all the grievances, lack of political freedom, lack of any kind of freedom. And Milosevic told me that I was misinformed, and who tells me, I remember him saying to me, "Congressman, who tells you such lies?" Who, you know, and the only one lying, of course, was him. You know. I think from those bad old days, we've come a long way. It's not enough, but we're moving in the right direction, and I think that, you know, there are things we need to tackle in this country. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like everything is wonderful. We've got a very good population of people who are dedicated. There are things we need to work on. We need to work on corruption, for instance. That's something that's a concern here. And when we talk about people coming in and investing, people want to invest if the society is not permeated with corruption. I think we need to work on that. And there are other things we need to work on. But the independence of the Republic of Kosovo is a modern miracle and an important miracle. And I'm very, very proud of the people of Kosovo and very proud to have been a part of that.
I'll just add briefly, because it was obviously a very thorough answer, but I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, and it's more difficult to block Kosovo as the economic activities in the country grow and economies become more integrated throughout Europe and throughout the world. So the project of getting the economy going, which everybody in this country of course wants, because it's about economic well-being of the citizens here that want to be able to pursue their life and to prosper, but it's important for the country as well and being part of the integrated world community. And as the economy grows, things have stabilized, and we've talked about, you get foreign direct investment into the country, you get American companies investing, European companies making investments in Kosovo. The political situation will take care of itself as well. They really go hand in glove. You can't be talking about politics separate from the economics. It really is a political, economic world. And some of us would argue economics drives more than anything else of the politics. So that is why that part of the mission for Kosovo is just so important for both reasons that we've talked about internally, but that'll have broad implications internationally as well.
We have time for just one more last quick question.
Hello, it's a huge pleasure to have you here. I'm Julian, freshman from Albania, and my question is, if I'm not wrong, you have been, Mr. Congressman, have been calling for reforms in the policy of employment in the USA in order for, correct me if I'm wrong, in order for people of America to come back at work, and the indexes of that reforming of the policy of employment has been good in September, if I'm not wrong. So how would you advise the Kosovo government to reform, because I don't really think that that is an explicit policy of employment here in Kosovo. So how would you advise the employment policy in Kosovo to be evolved, to be a good one in order to have a growing and evolving in economy terms?
Well, I think, you know, in the United States, I have been advocating, as I mentioned before, infrastructure jobs. I think that the government can and should get involved in the creation of jobs. I would always say the same thing, and I pointed to the road. The road in itself is not an end all and be all, but it's an important, very important step in the right direction. I think we talked about the business climate, encouraging foreign investment. If people feel comfortable and feel that the government's stable, the country's stable, and that the country's doing things to encourage a business to invest. I know business is always wanting to invest, but when you have to pay a lot of tax and you have other fees you have to pay, it makes it less profitable. So I think those things, we need to see what will bring foreign investment here in Kosovo, and what specifically would make people invest in Kosovo. They're not going to invest if they've got to spend a lot of money, they pay high taxes, everything's expensive, and maybe down the road, if they're lucky, they'll get a return on their investment. So I think we have to create a good business climate here, just like in the United States. I mean, how you do it specifically, I leave it to the elected officials here in Kosovo, but I think that the Prime Minister is doing a good job, and I think that he understands the you know, what to do. And let me also say, since you're from Albania, I also went to Albania for the first time in you look at Tirana, when I first went there, when there wasn't even a hotel you can stay in. In fact, the first time I was in Albania, I stayed in Enver Hoxha's guest house, where he had lived. And I slept in his bed, which was a very creepy thing. They told me that the ghosts were flying around the bed, and everybody was interested in all the people that worked for the Albanian government, mostly young people at the time, asked me if I would let them into the house because they were guarding it, but they were never allowed to go in. I said, sure, and they all ran in, and they looked at it, and it was no big deal to say the truth. But now, first there was one hotel in Tirana, it was the Rodna Hotel, and now there are lots of different places. Tirana is as good a capital for young people and for tourism and cafes as you can find any place in Central Europe. So I think Albania, and we met with Sally Berisha, who was here yesterday also to participate in the opening of the highway, and I think he sees it the same way. So there are lots of opportunities here. I would tell American investors and other investors to come to the Balkans. I think they can make a lot of money, and I think they can help the people in the Balkans. But we have to make sure that the rule of law is here, and that people feel there's a good business climate to invest.
Allow me to add something. One thing that Albania and Kosovo has in common, one from many, is that I'm sure that no employee in Kosovo or in Albania knows her or his rights. So talking a constitutional level or
We're going to have to wrap things up now. Congressman Peters, would you like to say any final words?
Well, just final words, actually, I'll just follow up on what Congressman Engel mentioned for the last question about investment. Because I think we've talked a little bit about foreign investment coming in, but that's not to discount the incredible entrepreneurial spirit that exists within Kosovo and Albania. I know from my community in the greater Detroit area, the Albanian community is made up of incredible business people who really know how to build a business and came there with nothing. And pursued the American dream, worked hard, understand how to build a business. So I know those talents are all through Kosovo and Albania that are within that. So I don't think there should be a focus that it's strictly direct investment from foreign entities here in the countries that's going to get the economy going. It's really going to be the people within your country and the talents that you have and that entrepreneurial. I talked about in my beginning comments about small business. That's really the engine of growth. The one area that I've focused a lot on Congress these last 3 years has been the ability for small businesses to get access to money. I haven't done an analysis of the banking system here in this country, but I think that's one that I would be looking at if I was an elected official here right away, is the fact that if you don't have access to capital, you don't have access to it at a decent price, so you're not going to be able to start a business, you're not going to be able to operate it, you're not going to have operating capital. So you've got to have a banking system that is healthy, has got sufficient reserves, and is available for the entrepreneurs within the country to seize their ideas and to use their hard work, and that they can borrow money, have access to even smaller amounts at a lower value. So I think that's going to be critical for Kosovo to move forward, just as it is in the United States. And we've had challenges. After the disaster we had on Wall Street, many small banks, or smaller community banks, which really make most of the loans to small businesses, were not in the position to do that. We saw a stifling of small business activity, and with that, unemployment rate went up dramatically. Until we reverse that, and we're starting to do that, I worked on legislation to put reserves into the banking system and incentivize it to get into the hands of small businesses. Until you incentivize banks and work closely with the banking industry to incentivize investment from small businesses, I think it's tough to get the dynamism that exists in an economy going forward. And there's no question in my mind that it exists in Kosovo. We've just got to be able to unlock that, and the banking system is going to be a key part of that. But I can't speak to the specifics of your banking system, but I think that's going to be critical.
Thank you, Congressman. Now, Congressman Engel, before you say any last words, I just want to point out that as wonderful a city as Tirana is becoming, the nightlife in Pristina is a lot better.
Well, I'll let you know after tonight, because we want to go out and have some fun, since I have to leave for the airport tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. So I figure you really can't sleep, so you might as well party. But I want to just thank you for letting me speak. And again, I want to thank all of you for your warmth and your kindness. And you're all smiling and look great. And I think this country has a very good future with young people like you.